And we are now recording. Up. Normally, you should be able to see my screen. So the local group Darmstadt present today from Project Risk Towards Uncertainty Management. It will be presented by our speaker, Paul Cuypers. I think some of you may know Paul already because he's a regular speaker for the PMI. He was as well a speaker for PM for the World. He was as well already speaking for us. So we are really happy to have him again to speak today. Just a short agenda, so I will take just 10 minutes of your time now, and then I will let Paul the stage during, let's say, 1 hour and 10 minutes. And we will have 10 minutes of Q&A session at the end. In case, feel free to raise your question in the chat, so then we can tackle them at the end. And then I will ask you 10 minutes of your time at the end, when I will give you the PDO code and some further information about the PMI and the local groups. The conduct guidelines, so please mute your microphone, use your full name, so then we can give you the PDO code at the end. Turn your video if you wish. This session is recorded, so you are welcome as well to not turn it on if you prefer. Use the chat and please mute yourself. And you are welcome as well to contact the speaker afterwards. Please do not use any AI bot. We are not allowing the transcription of this session for privacy purposes. So I guess you all know the PMI, so the Project Management Institute. In Germany, it was established in 2020, the German chapter, with the merge of the former regional chapter. So the Germany chapter is divided in 5 regions, and we are located in the central region. So you see where Darmstadt is located here. And we have more than 25 local groups all over Germany, so you can always find the one nearby you to join us and to volunteer. We have currently more than 6,000 members from 40 different countries, so we are a very diverse community in Germany. And we have more than 150 volunteers here in Germany, and we provide, as you know, empowerment for future leaders. We are empowering learning of project management, fostering networking, and driving as well social impact through different projects, social projects. So you are very welcome to join us. And more specifically, our local group Darmstadt. So as I said, Darmstadt is in Region Central, 40 kilometers from Frankfurt. We are English-speaking community from 7 volunteers from 6 countries. Actually, I didn't update this slide because we have now 1 new volunteer, Laura from Spain. So we are a very diverse group. And we try to provide you with 2 free online events per month. And we are really happy because we had more than 3,000 participants since the beginning. And we organize as well, which is really important for us, 1 roundtable a month. And if you are in the region and you would like to connect, feel free to join us as well online, on site as well, and on our LinkedIn group. Now I will introduce briefly Paul Cuypers, but I think he will speak about himself afterwards as well. So he is a senior project and program management professional with international experience. So today he's located in Oslo, as he told us, and he has as well experience in different sectors. He's the founder of Hive's project research. and his focus is on project risk, risk awareness, and improvement of delivery methods. And he's a speaker, a trainer, and a consultant in the project management communities. And he's an active as well speaker in different events in the PMI Global Summit, and as well to the, as I say, PM for the World, and even for our small local groups. So we are really happy to have him today. So I hope you will give him a warm welcome. Thank you, Paul, and the stage is yours.
All right, thank you for the introduction. Trying to share my screen.
Yes, we can see you.
Which is working?
Yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We're going to be talking about one of the biggest challenges that we have in project management today, and that is to migrate from, or sorry, to transition from risk to project uncertainty management. So tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Let's see if we can get this to work. There. So we'll do a short introduction, like why do we care about project management? Is that because we are project managers, or is it a really important mission for us? Then we'll quickly talk about the theory of uncertainty management, and then we'll look at some practical techniques, and then we'll talk about going forward. Going forward is important because you probably have the experience that you go to a seminar like this, or you go to a course, and then you have a lot of ideas. And then the next day you go back to your job and you do everything the same thing as before. Nothing has changed. So it's equally important to look at, all right, what am I going to do different after this? So let's start with a question like, why do we care about projects? What is the function of projects? So if you look at organizations, there's basically three parts. Starting on the outside, there's the informal organization. That is what happens at the coffee machine. We all know that. Then there is the standing organization, which is sort of the permanent organization. Of course, it's subject to change and it evolves, but it's basically your normal organization that takes care of the business as usual. And then we have temporary organizations, and we have various types. And basically what temporary organizations do, they provide flexibility, because if you have a unique assignment, right, the standing organization does the business as usual, but where you have something unique, then you need to get the right people, the right technology, the right capacity, and so on. So you create a temporary organization to take care of that unique assignment. And once that assignment is done, of course, then you disband the organization. There's also priority. Crisis teams typically, of course, will take urgent actions. If you're like hacked and you get ransomware in your system or something, you establish a crisis team that's capable of dealing with that crisis. They don't look too much about efficiency and planning. You just get the job done, because it costs a lot more than trying to save a couple of euros or dollars. Projects are middle of the road. Basically, you want the effectiveness, but you also want to have the efficiency. So projects are special. So basically, all temporary organizations, and projects in particular, are the vehicles of change. When we need to improve something, we go for a project. And we also want effectiveness, but we also want to have bang for buck. Now, being good at projects is important. If you look at the core capabilities of an organization, for example, research and development, how do we organize those assignments? As projects. Look at business innovation, how do we organize that work? As projects. Business transformation, again, projects. Your operational capabilities, satisfying your customers. In a lot of industries, like you're building a boat or a ship or a bridge or a building or an apartment complex, those customer deliverables are organized as projects. You want to improve your governance? You're probably going to run a projects, and so on and so on. So you can see where this is going. So the message is this: if you're good at running projects, you're probably likely to succeed with changing and improving your business and make it more profitable. So projects basically add flexibility to the organization. And again, it's a vehicle of change. Change mostly comes through projects. Now, being unique in nature, that makes it implicitly uncertain. Now, here's the catch. The definition of uncertainty is uncertain. When we talk about uncertainty, people mostly say, well, risk. And when we talk about risk, we talk about an uncertain event and vice versa. So we're sort of going around in circles. Now, the picture you see is Madame Curie, and she was the inventor, or not the inventor, but the discovered radioactivity. And the first radioactive element she discovered, she called it polonium, after her country, Poland, where she came from. And you could say, like, well, poisonous and radioactive, sort of the same thing. You can get killed by both. But here's the thing. If you take all the precautions for poison, like you put it in glass vials and make care that you don't breathe it and you don't touch it, right? If you take all the precautions for poisonous substances, you still end up getting sick or getting killed because radioactivity goes straight through the glass. So in order to control radioactivity, you need to know the exact definition. Same with velocity versus acceleration. If you ask people about the difference, they'll say like, velocity is sort of acceleration, where there's one, there's the other. It's sort of the same thing, but it's different. Well, engineers will laugh at you because if velocity and acceleration are that fuzzy defined, we'll never shoot any rockets into space. Now, then we go to our business, project management, uncertainty versus risk. Again, where there's one, there's the other. It's sort of the same, but different. But here's the thing, you cannot control what you cannot define. So we know that risk is not uncertainty, but we need to have a more accurate definition if we want to control it. So let's do an example. Let's say you're on a project, you're exploring some desert, and you're traveling from south to north to the X marks the spots, and that's an oasis where you're going to go. And suddenly, lo and behold, there is a major lake in front of you. Now, that was not expected because you don't have a map, you are exploring, and the lake is there. So you look to the left, all you see is a shoreline. If you look to the right, all you see is a shoreline. So you don't see the bend on the right-hand side. So you have a decision to make. Are we going left or are we going right? Now, let's say that you go right. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's a 2-day trip to reach the spots, and you have food and water for 1 day. You're going to make it on day 2. You're going to be thirsty and hungry, but you're going to make it to the oasis. Let's say you decide to go left. Then you're going to die somewhere after 4 or 5 days in the desert by the side of the lake. Now, here's the key thing. You end up, your exploration ends up in disaster, ends up with a total failure, but there's no risk involved. The reason why you end up dying by the lake is the result of a constraint, being the lake, that you were not aware of, an unknown constraint, and a wrong decision. There was no risk involved at all. Let's put it this way. You'd been bit by a snake, there's a chance of that happening, right? Either you get bit by a snake or you don't, and there's a certain chance of that happening. Or you could sprain your ankle or break your leg and stuff like that. So risk has a possibility of occurring. Now, the lake is just there. It doesn't have a possibility of occurring. There's no God in the sky that tosses a coin and says, you know what, if it's head, then I put a lake in front of these guys. If it's tails, well, then they can just proceed. The lake is there. The lake is an aspect of uncertainty. It's a constraint that you're not aware about. Decisions are also aspects of uncertainty. We are making decisions under uncertainty. We don't know the right answer. So uncertainty is definitely not risk. So if you look in general, very general, why do plans fail? Take it from the top. Well, risk, right? Unwanted events that might or might not happen. Yeah, they can ruin your plans. Shabby work, unprofessional work, low quality work, that will ruin your plans as well. Unreliable estimates, of course, right? How accurate are our estimates? Unrealistic planning, that will ruin it. But at the root of everything that happens, it is missing information. If you go back to the lake example, missing information. Had you known about the lake, you would have planned for enough food. Had you known about the lake, then you would have taken the right-hand turn and not the left-hand turn. So the root cause is missing information. And that is basically what we call uncertainty, missing information. Because if you have all the information that there is to know, there is no uncertainty. Let's look at another example. Let's say you're a ship at sea, you're running your radar, and you're in the center. The top view is your radar view. You have a contact on your radar, that's ship number C. But your radar has a certain range, right? The ships A and B, they are directly heading towards you, but you're not seeing them. So one aspect of uncertainty is that what information is out there that is not yet available. The ships will close, so eventually they will come on your radar and then you can take action. But right now they're outside your view. The information is not available. And you can ask yourself, all right, why don't we build a stronger radar? Well, as you know, the Earth is curved and the ships A and B, they are below your radar range. So even if you build a bigger one, you won't be able to detect it because they're below the curvature of the Earth. So this is what happens with planning as well. We can look forward into the future and then we can do more planning, but at some point in time, it won't give us any more information because there is a certain limit how far we can look into the future. So if you then combine these two elements, that gives you a matrix. On the horizontal side, there's the information that's available and information that is not available, that's in the future. But there is a second one, information that you're aware of and information that you're unaware of. If you go back to your radar picture, you see a lot of black dots. That is called clutter. The wave tops will reflect your energy as well, and they will show up as small contacts. So hidden in that information, there can be relevant contacts. So you're looking at them, so you're not seeing. So the second limitation is our awareness. Specifically now in the internet age, we all carry a smartphone. We have tons and tons of information at our disposal. So a lot of information is available, but we're not aware of the fact that it exists or that it is relevant for us. So that gives you 4 combinations. Known. The known area of your project is information that is available and you are aware of its existence and relevance. Then, of course, there's the known unknowns, like you want to know, but you don't know. For example, you're going to drive with a car or a bike tour, and then you are aware of the risk that you might get a flat, but will it happen? That is in the future. You'll have to wait and see. There also can be unknown known information. Say that you're running a project, and a couple of years earlier, your company did exactly the same project. Now, there is a lesson learned report somewhere, but all the people that did the project, they left the company and nobody remembers. So the answer to all your planning questions and your estimates and your solutions and your decisions, it's all there, but you are not aware that it exists. That's an unknown known. And then there's the scary one, of course. There is the unknown unknown. So that gives you a definition of uncertainty. It's an effect of information availability, but it's also a function of information unawareness. So let's practice this. Let's say you're building a house. It's called the Dream House Project, and you make a decision. You have a decision to make. Are we going for solar panels or wind? So you look at the prognosis for the cost. You look at the prognosis for how much power it will generate. And then you decide to go for solar. So asking, please put it in the chat. This decision, you're going for solar. Where would you put that in the matrix? And Florian, if you could assist me, please, with reading the answers. So you have a decision to make and a choice, 2 options, wind versus solar, and you're going for the solar, has been decided. Where would you put that decision?
Please use the chat, or if you will,
Just
you can as well speak.
Oh, yeah. You're very passionate about this decision, please. All right, Florian, what do I get?
Yes, sorry, you cannot see. Unknown, known,
I cannot see, yeah.
Aware, unknown, solar, known, 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 unknown, known. So, but there is still a majority of known.
All right, okay, known. All right, here's the thing. Let's say that you go for the solar, right? And the panels get delivered, it works, it produces power, the owner is happy, And let's say the forecast was it was going to deliver, let's say, 8 kilowatt of power or so, and it matches that. But you will never know, are you capable of knowing if you had gone for the wind turbine, might it have been better? So let's say that you install a small anemometer, a small wind meter, and you record your wind speeds for a year. Then you stick it into a model, right? And you get a forecast. Now, you might get a very crappy summer with very little power, but a lot of wind. So wind would have been the better solutions. Now, in this case, you're capable of knowing because for a couple of bucks, you can install a wind meter. And then you, let's say, measure for a year, and then you can compare what the actual output would have been. So basically, until you have confirmed that you made the right decision, any decision is a known unknown. So making the decision, that's one thing. But knowing that you made the right one, that puts it into the known one. This is very interesting for projects because you only get one shot to do it. Let's say you have a choice between going for a SQL database or Oracle database. Well, let's say you go for the SQL one. And then 1 year later, system is up and running, performance is good, input, output, but you'll never know what would have happened if you went for the other option. Because in project, we can only do things once most of the time. Here's another one, a constraint. So you're driving from A to B, let's say again the desert, and there's no gas stations, and you only have enough gas to get halfway, right? That's a constraint. Where would you put that constraint? So you're crossing the desert from A to B, your gas tank only gets you halfway. And of course, if you start driving, you'll end up in the desert, stuck, no gas, and you have to walk for the remainder.
So I have known unknown, unknown unknown, known known, known known, feels like known known, known
right.
unknown. So it's a bit divided between known known and known unknown.
All right. So the first question is this information available? Yes, we know how much gas how much petrol we can carry. Are we aware of it? Yes, we're also aware of it. So the fix then is to add extra jerrycans to your vehicle to make sure you make it all the way. So this constraint is a known, and basically you manage it in your plans by carrying some spare jerrycans yourself. Here's another one, risk. You're looking out of the window and there's a lot of ice and you see your neighbor crashing into the ditch because of it's so slippery. And you have to go to work, so you identify the risk of ruining your car, wrecking your car just like your neighbor. Okay, so you have to go to work, it's slippery, there's the risk of ice and stuff. Where would you put this risk in the matrix?
People are thinking a bit.
I hear crunching noises in the background.
Unknown known. Known unknown, so complete opposite.
Yeah.
Known unknown, known unknown, known known, known unknown.
All right.
Unknown
Okay, so
known.
this is a risk. There is a probability of crashing your car, but it's not a given. So let's say that you make the tour, you go to work, and then you have the answer. Either you ended up in a crash or you made it. So there's a potential for happening, but it might not happen again, right? So it's a known unknown. You know that you want to know, but you also know that you don't know. Now, you can, of course, take some risk mitigation actions and say, well, I'm going to drive real slowly. Yep, but there is still residual risk because if somebody else crashes into you, you still end up in a crash. Some people might not be as cautious as you are. So even if you take mitigation actions, there is residual risk. So it's still a known unknown, and you will know by the time you get to your work. Now, let's say you call your boss and say, can I have home office today? And they say, yep, that's okay. So you're not going to drive at all. So you have avoided the risk. So that risk is now a known. It's not going to happen because you're going to stay at home. You're not going to drive. All right, a problem. Let's say that you have a car and the car is leaking oil from the engine. Now we have a problem. Why? Well, the oil is supposed to be in the engine, not leaking out of it. So you're on your way to work, you're in a hurry, there's a splash of oil under your car, and you start driving your car and you have a problem. Where would you put this?
Unknown. Unknown. For the time being is unanimity. Unknown. We have Matthäus who say known, unknown. Unknown.
Anybody goes for an unknown known? All right, let's put it this way. There's two possibilities. The first question is the information of the problem available? Answer, yes, it is, because there is a splash of oil under your car. So there's two possibilities. If you just hurry into your car and you don't see it, it's an unknown known. The information exists, right? But you're not aware of it. If you happen to look under your car and see the splash of oil, then it's a known. You see the oil lying there and you're aware that it's a problem. So depending on what you do, if you bend down and you spot it, then it's a known. If you just get into your car and not seeing it, and how many people actually check under their car before they start driving, it would be an unknown known. The information exists, but it's not known to you. So the uncertainty matrix gives us a mental model, a visual model of what uncertainty is. So basically, there are 4 information reduction strategies, because if the if the known area is total, right, there is no uncertainty. So the first thing we can do, we can raise our information awareness. Second thing we can do is we can make more information available. Even if we have a lot of information, that doesn't mean we make the right decisions or solve the right problems or make the right choices when it comes to implementation. So that is about information effectiveness. We need to raise our effectiveness of our information, and we need to raise the efficiency of our information. Information effectiveness is about making the right decision given the information that you have. Information efficiency is about how much time and effort does it take us to get the right information so we can make the decisions and solve the problems and address the risk and like that. So effectiveness is, given the information that you have, end up with the right results. Information efficiency is gathering the information, processing the information, visualizing the information, create tables, and distribute that information. If that takes too much time, your problems might get worse over time. Let's say, for example, you get into the car, the oil is leaking, and with every minute, the problem is getting bigger. If it takes a lot of time, if it takes 2 or 3 days to get the information about that you have a problem or how to solve it, things will get worse from there. So let's go back to information availability and information awareness. Let's say that you create a plan and you have activity A and B, they are sequential. Activity C is in parallel. But let's say that there is a dependency that you're not aware of, and that will cause your plan to fail. So you think there's no dependency, but in reality there is, and that will make you miss your deadline. It could also be an activity that is outside your, that you're simply not aware of that information, but should be part of the plan. So this is how risk differs from uncertainty. With risk, we have a plan, right? And we say, what could go wrong in the plan? If you look at uncertainty management, you ask the question, all right, what information are we not seeing that will cause the plan to fail? So going back to the lake example, you ended up dying by the lake and there wasn't a single risk involved. It was missing information. You were not aware of the lake. And when you made the decision to go left, you were not aware of the shape of the lake and which was the shortest route. So this was a short theory of uncertainty. Here's the uncertainty matrix, which provides us with a generic definition of uncertainty. It's basically a function of information awareness and information availability. And that gives you 4 quadrants. And every piece of information about a project, a risk, a problem, a decision, they can all be placed in that matrix. And there's 4 basic uncertainty reduction strategies. Raise your information awareness, make more information available. But even if you have a lot of non-known information, you need to improve the effective use of your information. People have a lot of information, but they still make the wrong decisions. And you need to maximize your information efficiency. How much time and effort does it require to get the right information? Any questions about uncertainty management and the theoretical foundation? I know it's quite abstract.
Maybe we let the people 1 or 2 minutes to think how to formulate the question.
Yep.
Feel free to speak if you prefer, or maybe to write it in the chat and I will read it.
All right. I think I'll continue, and
there is a question
take...
of Elena, actually, how to encourage teams to do regular risk monitoring and regularly engage with risk mitigation strategies.
I would say that we get to that in the practical part after this. Yes, I will address that in the next part. Yeah.
So Elena, keep your question for later, and if you need more insight, you can ask afterwards. And I think Henning is rather giving a statement. Nowadays, management tends to spoil much time on reaction effectiveness instead of deciding and going forward.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. That's a very good observation, and we'll get to that too. That's the difference between proactive and reactive. And we'll get to that too into the practical. Nice. Okay, all right. So we looked at theory, and it is conceptual stuff, and it's not easy. It takes time to start thinking in terms of uncertainty. And you saw the variation in the answers. Basically, the answers were all over the quadrant. It takes some time and practice to let it sink in and then start using the mental model of uncertainty where you are. So let's have a look at practice. Enough theory. So here's a test for you. Are you ready? Strap into your seats.
I think we don't have the sound. It's muted, Paul.
So it's easy to miss something you're not looking for. And this was an ad to create more awareness of cyclists. Of course, when you're a car driver, you're not looking for cyclists. But of course, in a collision, the cyclist always loses. So it is easy to miss something you're not looking for. This is not just a gag. This is not just a gag. This was there's two Harvard psychologists who wrote a book about the missing gorilla, and they showed students films like this, and they concluded around 80 or 90% of the people, they were so busy counting the passes that they never saw the gorilla. In their case, it was a gorilla, not a moonwalking bear. But the good news is that when they reversed the experiment and warned people ahead of time, then about 80 or 90% of the students got the count right, and they picked up the gorilla. So this is a very scary in many ways, because in projects we are so busy with making our deadlines and achieving milestones and with our daily stand-up and reporting here and planning there, that there might be essential information right under your nose, like the moonwalking bear, and you might be missing it. So say, for example, you have a project and you have a decision to make. You say, well, we have option A, option B, and option C. But option D, which might be the better option, might be right under your nose and you're not seeing it. But it also goes for other decisions. You might be focusing very hard on a decision you think that is essential, but there could be other, much more urgent decisions right under your nose that you're not seeing. But same thing, if you now replace the decision with problems, you could be focusing on solving a problem that you consider urgent. You might be missing another problem that is again right under your nose, and you might be missing solutions to that problem. You might be missing deliverables that you should be delivering, but you're not focusing on that. And you could also be affected by risk. You could be focusing on risk, and then you say, well, are we going to mitigate using A, B, or C? Well, the logical option would be D, you're not seeing, but you could also be missing out essentially on other risks. So this is what project metadata is based on. If you predefine with your team what information you should be looking for, then you dramatically improve the chances of picking it up. So that was the second part of the experiment. If you warn people ahead of time what to look for, then you increase the chances to 80 to 90% that people will pick it up. So there was a question about how do I get people to do risk? Well, that is a continuous effort. Agree with your team on we should be looking for risk, agree on what a risk is and how it should be reported. And by training your team to look for it, you probably discover more risk than just having once a month some sort of risk review done only by the project manager. It's a team effort to gather all the information. Now, let's say you're going to be building a house. Let's say you have a faraway uncle you never knew dies, and finally you inherit some money and you think, well, I'm going to build a house. So there's a couple of stories, epic stories that define your dream house. First of all, it's a house. It has a greenhouse. It has a swimming pool. It has renewable energy. So if you start defining your information elements you want to see, starting from the top, first of all, you want to define and train your people to look for epics. Secondly, you want to train your people to watch for decisions. You want to train your people to look out for deliverables. And then, of course, activities and tasks. Now, if you look at most projects, people look for tasks and people look for activities, and they have a Gantt chart displaying the activity plan, and they typically have a Kanban board displaying the task time. But the key thing to ask is, guys, that activity should create a deliverable. Which deliverable is that? Yes, you're doing an activity like a workshop, but what is the deliverable from that workshop activity? And here's the second thing. Those deliverables, they are subject to decisions. For example, the renewable energy, you have to make a decision. Am I going for solar panels or wind or both? So what deliverables you have to deliver is subject to decisions. So you need to train your team to spot decisions. And of course, epics are mostly defined by the project owner, but spotting epics is basically a matter of missing requirements. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a project metadata model, for example, decisions. A decision has the description, it has some attributes, it's either urgent or important. There's choices that you have, options going left or right. You need to take into account, is it a global decision or is it a local decision, right? A global decision affects the entire project, or is it a local decision that we can take by ourselves? Who owns it? What is the latest point in time that we can take that decision, and who should be involved? Deliverables has a description, it has an owner, it needs to satisfy requirements. It has a fit criterion that we use to see how we're going to approve that deliverable. It has a status, started, doing, or completed, and it has a cost. An activity has a description, a lead time, resources, status, and dependencies. So basically, you create a project metadata model. Now, here's the thing. There's like thousands of projects in the world, but the number of information items, like I just showed you, is only a limited set. Now, let me show you the analogy in the music world. There's literally millions and millions of songs out there, but by the end of the day, all these songs are written by a couple of chords. Now, if you don't believe it, watch these guys. Oh, sorry about it. So I'm not sure if I can get rid of it. Yeah.
I think you don't share your audio. Or is it only me not hearing it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't work. Yeah, sorry. Paul?
Sorry, Florian, is the
Paul?
audio not here?
Yeah, it's not working. Yeah.
You're not hearing the audio? All right, give me a sec.
I think if you reshare, like stop sharing and share again and tick the share audio box,
Yeah.
you should be able to do that.
Let's see. And now this is share, tick the audio box. Here we go. Try again. And here we go. Okay.
You're not sharing at all, Paul. Need to reshare. Paul, you're not sharing. Paul? Paul?
Yes, is the audio okay?
No, you're not sharing at all.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Share includes sound. Here we go. Share my screen. You have my screen?
No, we don't see anything.
Here then, take up there. Here. All right. You have my screen?
Yes, now we share. Yeah.
All right.
Just listen. Do you recognise this?
Yeah, that is Don't Stop Believing by Journey.
It's a great song.
Very original
There's a few more that
song.
fit. Check it out.
My life is brilliant, my love is pure. I saw an angel, of that I'm sure.
Well, that's just two songs that are similar. That's not a big deal.
Forever young,
Three
I
songs.
wanna be forever young. I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait. I'm yours. This is the way you left me. I'm not pretending. No love, no hope, no glory, no happy ending. 'Cause you were amazing. We did amazing.
And so on and so on. These guys are called the Axis of Awesome, as it says in the title, and they're basically proving that, yeah, you can play about any song with 4 chords. Now, this is also the premise of project metadata technique. So you can define a limited number of project metadata elements, and they will cover all your information needs. So we discuss epics, decisions, deliverables, activities, and tasks. There's a number more here. I won't run through all of them, but this is a model called the Compass model. And basically, the premise is that any piece of information, either from a meeting or a document or from an email, can be translated in one of these elements. And you should train your team to look for these elements, agree on the definition, agree on the attributes, and then train your team to recognize them and then stick them into an information system where you can make it available. For example, look at a prerequisite. In projects, you need to have an approved mandate. You need to have approved resource allocations. Otherwise, your plan is not legal and it is just wishful thinking. You probably have a project budget, right? Like a couple of million euros. That is a constraint. You need to fulfill your project in 6 months. Again, that's a constraint. You might have a supplier that you depend on to supply you with parts. You have dependencies, you have risk, you have problems. So basically, project metadata technique is about defining with your team what information elements you should be looking for. That increases your awareness, and the next thing, you put it in your information system and make it available. For example, in a Kanban board. So we have our dream house, which is basically breaks down into 3 work streams. There's the house itself. We'd like to have a garage, and we'd like to have a pool, and we'd like to have a greenhouse. And basically, if you look at this Kanban board, you can say, well, we look at the right-hand side. We have already delivered the requirements. The requirements document is apparently okay. The target for our sprint is to create a design. And for the next sprint on the to-do list, it is the building itself that needs to be built. And then basically all your ticket types go into the Kanban board. So we have a decision to make, for example, wind or solar. We have identified a risk. We have an open end, something a known unknown. We have some testing tasks, and we have apparently made decision 1.1 that is apparently done, and so on. So basically your Kanban board provides you with a means of placing your information. It is a structure where you can put your information. So any emerging information, you can put it into your Kanban board structure. So let's say you stumble across a decision, and if it's an urgent decision, you make it and you mark it as done on your Kanban board. The next thing you then can do is create a dashboard and get additional KPIs. So if you look here at the prerequisite side of things, what is the status in my project? Well, I have 2 prerequisites that are not yet in place. They are in the to-do status. I'm taking care of 3, and I've got 7 done, and 1 got rejected. Decisions, how am I doing? I have 4 open decisions in to-do. I'm making 3 decisions, and I've got 18 done, and 0 rejected. Now, the rate at what this occurs is important. It provides you with reactive versus proactiveness. So let's say that the rate of the tickets, your decision tickets, shows up at a higher rate than you're making them. That basically means you're reactive. So if a project has a lot of open decisions, sooner or later, a number of activities are simply not going to start because essential decisions haven't been made. And that goes the same for risk. If your risks show up at a faster rate than you're mitigating, avoiding them, or evaluating them, again, you are vulnerable and you are reactive. Same goes for deliverables. If new deliverables pop up at a higher rate than you can deliver them, you've got yourself a problem. And same with problems. So I worked in a project and we trained people to be alert on decisions. That was one of the first types. And within the first 2 weeks, we got like 70 decisions. Then we started splitting them. Is it urgent or important? So we reduced the group to only the important ones. And we made sure that those got really addressed early, right away in the start of the project, to make sure that we had continuity. Then we analyzed, we created a backlog of all the important decisions. We looked at what is the latest date that I can make those decisions. And then we started analyzing the decisions, gathering the right information, getting the right people in the room, and we started making those decisions. There were 2 consultancy companies involved, and they said, hey, this is the first time that we're reactive and not getting stalled because there weren't decisions that weren't made yet. So Power Kanban is creating your ticket types, train everybody to be aware, stick it into the system, and then you can get a come on board to run it. It's not just about tasks, it's also about making decisions. It's about managing risk. It's about delivering deliverables. It's about getting prerequisites in place. So you have a larger variety of ticket types, and that gives you a number of KPIs, and make sure that you get proactive and don't get stalled. The other thing you can do is you can visualize your information structure in a result breakdown structure. So in our project, we have a number of epic stories. For example, epic A and epic B. Epic A would be, let's say, energy. Epic B would be a pool. Epic C would be the garage, and so on and so on. Now, when it comes to our solar versus wind, we have a decision to make. And the decision could be solar. There would be a deliverable A. It could be wind, or it could be a combination deliverable C, wind and solar. Now, the result breakdown structure provides you with a scope control. All the ticket types go into your scope, and all those ticket types means work. Like managing a risk, you have to put mitigation actions. Getting prerequisites in place takes time and effort. So what you can do is you can estimate all those tickets, either absolutely or relatively, and then you can do a bottom-up estimate, just like you do in classic project management, of all your ticket types. And then you can do two numbers. There's a lot of open decisions and there's a lot of unsolved problems. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but you have the various alternatives. So you can do the math. You can say, well, give me the cheapest path through the network, or give me the most expensive one. And that gives you a ballpark of where you are going with your project, money-wise and hour-wise. So the result breakdown structure basically is a visualization of your scope. It uses any ticket type. All ticket types means work. A decision doesn't make itself. You're probably going to have a workshop with a bunch of people. They write their hours. They need information to make the decision. Figuring out that information is going to take time. So you can visualize your scope, what you're doing. You are more granular than a traditional work breakdown structure. And you can get two numbers, your bottom-up cheapest estimate and your most costly one, and your most likely one that you're aiming for. The second thing that you can do is agile rolling wave planning. Now, as we discussed, looking forward into the future is has a limit. You can spend more time planning, but at some point in time, there is not enough result to warrant the effort. So the answer to that problem is that diminishing returns, planning returns, is agile rolling wave planning, which is basically a planning method in 4 different levels. So on the top level, we plan the entire project in terms of epics. Then the next level is our decision level. We look forward as far as we can. All decisions we identify, the urgent ones we make right away, but the important ones, we place them on the latest point in time where they need to be made. Then we have our deliverables. Our deliverables are basically approved or rejected, which is a term of which basically is measures progress. We have our activity plan and we have our task plan. So what you see is you have 5 planning levels. The epic level is the overall planning level. You try to plan your project in terms of epics, and the task level is, of course, on the short time horizon. And you'll plan like maybe a sprint ahead for your task. So if you then combine the techniques and see how this works, so we have team 1, team 2, and team 3. Each has a scope, an assigned scope, what they are accountable for to deliver. That gets broken down into in a result breakdown structure. And what you then can do is you can start coordinating between your teams. Let's say, for example, that the boxes, the colored boxes, are decisions. So team 1 has decision 1, team 2 has decision 2 and 3 to make, and team 3 has 4, 5, and 6. So what you then can do is say, well, give me all the decisions and let's look at the dependencies in a network diagram. So decision 2 can be made when 1 is done, and so goes decision 3. Then decision 5 and 4 go in parallel, and then I can make decision 6. So you can create a network plan not at the activity level like you do in PERT, but you create it, for example, at the decision level, and you show it as a network plan with the dependencies. And that is how you can coordinate the action between teams and create awareness about what is happening in the entire project. You can also visualize it in terms of a calendar plan. It's just a different visualization. So we have our epics and we have a rough planning in terms of months where we do that. But we can also say, well, let's visualize our epics, still high-level planning in terms of dependencies. So renewable energy decision, and you have, epic, and the greenhouse and the pool epic. There's a dependency there, because if the renewable energy doesn't provide enough power to heat the greenhouse or to heat the pool, you want to know that you have the renewable energy under control, because it will have consequences for those other epics. So in summary, you have your project metadata in the center on the left-hand side. That is basically the information you want to see. Again, the awareness test. Sit down with your team and decide what information elements you would like to see and what attributes they have. Decisions, activities, risks, problems, and so on. Then you have your project information system, which is basically, then you have your project information system, which basically contains all your tickets. And then you have on the outside ring, you have the various ways of visualizing all those information tickets. And then you have the planning levels. At epic planning, you do for your entire project. And short-term planning, you do at the task level. And you try to look as far as you can, but you spend not too much time in planning that's going to be wasted. Then there's the forever question about risk and how do you evaluate a risk? So first thing to look at, what is the opposite of risk? Well, if risk is the possibility of having negative effects, then luck would be the possibility of having good effects. And what they have in common is that they are event-based. So a risk might happen, or it might not happen. You might be lucky, you might not get lucky. The other possibility is that it is condition-based, like a threat or an opportunity. If you think about your building the dream house in 50 degrees in Spain, that's a threat. Now, a threat is not the same thing as a risk. So you could make a mistake in building, and that's a risk, right? But the intense heat will increase the chances of making the mistake, but it's not the same thing. So the threat will increase the chance of the risk, but it's not the same thing because the risk also exists without the threat. Same with an opportunity. Let's say there is a lake on the, let's say there's a lake on the, so you can cool down the guys working, and that's a condition. So, and they affect each other. Second thing to look at is, are we aware of the risk or are we unaware of the risk? Other thing to determine is like, the phenomenon I'm looking at, is it deterministic or random? Take, for example, is it a random thing I'm looking at, or is there some sort of logical pattern that is? The other thing is it a structural variation or natural variation? And the other thing to look at, can it be influenced or not be influenced? For example, the weather. The weather, it can be forecasted, right? You are aware of the weather, but you can't influence it. So if you're dealing with a risk, you've identified a risk, there is a continuum where you need to take into account. So the first stage is the secure stage of risk. The ship cannot sink simply because it is on land. As soon as you put it in sea, you go into the risk stage, because you might hit something and you might get a leak and you might sink, but then again, it might not happen. So you can put a radar to avoid any risk of collision with other vessels, for example. If you do hit something and you get a leak, you're in the problem stage. So you can prepare for that by installing a bilge pump. Now, if the water runs in at a higher speed that you can, then you can pump it out, you got a problem, you're going to go down. That basically means you have a crisis. So a crisis is defined that when you can no longer fix your problem and your only option is to save as much as you can, then you have a crisis. So risk is a secure stage. As soon as you put the boat on the water, you introduce the risk, which is a risk event. The risk stage is most likely your operational stage, just like in projects, right? Things might happen, but then again, they might not. Then there can be a problem event. A risk becomes a problem. And as soon as you realize that you cannot fix the problem and you can only reduce the damage, you have yourself a crisis. So in the risk stage, there's classic risk management. There's 4 strategies: accept, avoid, mitigate, and transfer. For the problem stage, you can design countermeasures. And basically you can absolve the problem saying, well, it's not a problem. You just absolve it. You can resolve it, which is a temporary fix. You can solve it or you can dissolve it, make sure that it will never happen again. And in the crisis stage, you can go for contingency measures. You can endure the crisis. You can try to reduce the crisis. You can try to create continuity. Like, for example, in a hospital, right? If the power goes down, they have a generator to provide some essential services that should be continuous. Or you can focus on rebuilding. So that basically gives you 8 options, because in each stage, you have a choice to make. Am I going to invest money in the risk stage? Am I going to invest money for countermeasures? Or am I going to invest money in contingency measures? So that's an optimization you need to do. So in its most extreme, in the top line, you do nothing in the risk stage, and you're not going to spend money in problems and not on crisis. In the most other end of the scale, you say, well, this is so severe. Yes, I'll have risk reduction. Yes, I'll have problem. And yes, I'll have crisis management. For example, if you're running a nuclear reactor, you can't get away with saying, well, if it ever becomes a crisis, we'll figure out what we're going to do. People will demand. So that gives you 2 by 2 by 2 is 8 different options where to put your money. And of course, you're on a budget. You can't do it all. So that's an assessment you need to make. So classic risk management looks at preemptive measures. Uncertainty management looks at the entire continuum, the problem and the crisis side, and where to put the money. So practices. The first thing you want to be doing is to increase your information awareness. As discussed, project metadata technique. Remember the moonwalking bear. It is easy to miss something you're not looking for. So decide with your team, guys, what metadata things are we looking for? Prerequisites, constraints, problems, risk, crisis. Agree with your team on the definition. What is it? Agree on the attributes, like is a decision important or just urgent? Or a decision, is it global or local? And so on and so on. Know what to look for. The second thing is improving information availability. As discussed, the 4 strategies. Create various ticket types into a Kanban system. That basically means that you can select on information types. For example, give me all the decisions we have lying around in this project. Then you have a decision backlog. Give me all the problems that we have. You filter on problems. Then you have a problem backlog, all in one system. Give me all the risks that we're seeing. Then you have your risk log, and so on. And that makes the information available to everybody, not just the project manager who is sitting on a risk matrix or something. It is available to everybody using Power Kanban. The next thing you can do is scope definition, create your result breakdown structure. Again, any ticket type goes. Do an estimate with your team, do a bottom-up estimate, figure out the cheapest version, figure out the most expensive, and that gives you a ballpark. So decisions might not be made or problems might not be solved yet, but you can do the math and say, well, to your steering committee, well, the lower edge is this and the upper edge is that, which might happen. And the other thing is to conduct integrated planning, agile rolling wave planning. So you plan at 5 different levels, task on a day-to-day basis, short, epic and decision level, epic at the total duration of your project. And then as information emerges, you add it to the different planning levels. So a key thing about Agile is that picking up emerging information and adapting your plans according to that. That is a key Agile skill. And that is what Agile Rolling Wave Planning will do for you. And then finally is the robustness of your plan, the resilience, the in-flight guidance. There's basically 4 stages. There's risk, there's problem, there's crisis. And for each stage, you have to make a decision. Am I going to invest time and money in preemptive measures in the risk stage? Am I going to invest money in my countermeasures, make preparations, make sure that I have the procedures? Or when the worst becomes, if I cannot solve my problems and I have a crisis on my hands, invest time and money in preparing for contingency planning. So this was roughly 10 years worth of research and testing, trialing applications, testing techniques, adjusting them. They're written down in the Next Generation Agile Handbook. If you go to the site, you can download it for free. If you use PMI Germany or GE, if you use the discount code, I will be active after this meeting. So feel free to go there, download the handbook. Everything that has been discussed is in the handbook. I would appreciate it very much if you connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Please connect. And if you have any questions, we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think it was really good to have a kind of a theoric part and more practical. I think it gives a lot of insight. We had some background discussion on the chat concerning VUCA. I don't know if, Robert, you would like to raise a point, maybe explaining to Paul your ideas and maybe if you have a question.
Yeah, the VUCA grid, was that what you said?
So otherwise I will read the question of Robert.
Let's go to the chats.
So it was expanding on the topic of uncertainty to 4 ingredients of VUCA. Do you take stance on VUCA for project culture, for example, proactively pro-VUCA, proactively anti-VUCA, or passive about VUCA? I don't know if Robert, you could explain a bit better.
VUCA,
then I saw some discussion about how to create a KPI to monitor those effects.
So when it comes to KPIs, I would like to refer to the dashboard. So provided you have Power Kanban in place, you can create a dashboard and look at the trends. And that tells you a lot. Again, if the problem tickets are piling up at a faster rate than I can resolve them, I am reactive, and therefore there is uncertainty. Same with decisions. If the decision tickets come at a higher rate than I make them, again I'm reactive, and therefore it's a sign of uncertainty. The other thing would be is that the trends are the opposite, and then I'm reducing uncertainty because information is becoming available, how to solve problems, are we going left and right in terms of decisions, and so on and so on. And basically, I think VUCA is an American, I think it was a CIA, was it the original American CIA classification of how to classify stakeholders or enemies, basically. Violent, uncertain, where do they stand? Violent, uncertain, complex, and was that correct?
Okay. And then Frank is as well adding a question about VUCA. Would that want to interleave the VUCA perspective with stance matrix to derive decision support techniques most suitable or suitable?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Maybe if you would like to speak, it would be
here,
easier
yes, okay.
to understand what is your question, because we can only make assumptions.
A better question for Paul: could we create a metric A to quantify vital VUCA, maximize VUCA, or would that be counterproductive? I'm not sure really what the question is about, how to read this, to be honest. What I'll do is I'll take a copy of all the the questions, Florian, because there's a whole discussion going on. I can't read. I'll answer it. I'll do it in writing, and I'll make it available for you to distribute after that. Is that a way to go?
Yeah, sure. I think it's because I think it is required a bit of thinking. So, but if you have, there is other question, feel free to raise it either in question or on in the chat. And I posted as well in the chat or Mentimeter if you want to give a feedback on the session as well.
Yeah, maybe something from me. Hello, hi Paul, this is Gunda speaking. Well, with what you have presented today, of course, it takes now a little bit to digest and dive deeper into that, because that was at the beginning very abstract, but also very structured. But with that alone, you would already be able to, to do a quite good project management and not only risk management. Yeah, that is actually, I would see it even as a system to not only do risk management, but to run the whole project, because you have tasks, you have activities, you have decisions, you have risk, you have the epics. What else? Yeah.
Was that a statement or a question?
I would say it's a statement.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm reading here, for example, here's from Frank Schneider. May I assume decision can be understood as feature and deliverable is comparable to a user story? I think this, first thing I'd like to say about this question underlies the need to talk to your team and land on the project metadata model, right? Is decision the same thing as a feature, or is it two different things? Is a user story the same as a deliverable, or is it two different things? This question basically underlines the need for sitting down with your team, because if you don't work with the same concepts, then what are you discussing in your meetings, right? Does that make sense?
I mean, you're literally talking about something like flight levels in which you're distinguishing which kind of degree you're progressing with your planning. So it's a matter of like how you interpret or what is the term being used for, but I think it can be compared literally. And that's also when I was quoting about the Stacy matrix, literally, it's also helpful to decide what kind of solutions or techniques would I want to apply in terms of managing risks or managing my topics, issues whatsoever, depending on like what is the environment I am. Is it more complex? Is it complicated and I can grasp it? Or is it even tending to be a more chaotic one when you are going in a different way of like a rolling forward approach, because you can't tell about the long run future?
So you're talking about a key uncertainty. I'm glad you bring it up. we have a number of structural uncertainties in project management. Let me give you an example. We spent 40 years researching what a definition of project success is. And the answer from the scientists, we don't know. So all of us project managers are trying to achieve success. But how to define success is not possible. So that's pretty much 40 years of research looking for a black cat in a dark room when there is no black cat. So a key uncertainty is, what is success? Another key uncertainty is project methodology. There is no methodology concept in project management. Agile is called a methodology, PMI is a methodology, Prince is a methodology, but there's no overarching method, a meta method to define which one is better and how to prove it, like you have in research. In research, you always ask the question like, okay, yeah, we did some research, we answered the question, but if we have changed the method, would we have reached different conclusions? This goes also for projects. So let's say, yeah, you did a project, you used PMP, or you used Prince 2, or you used Scrum. But the key question is, of course, had you used another method, could you have achieved more success? So there is a fair amount of uncertainties. And then there's also the Tower of Babel. If you take a number of basic comparisons, if you ask average project manager, what is the difference between a requirement and a specification? They mostly go like, well, it's sort of this or that. What's the difference between risk and uncertainty? Well, it's sort of this and that. If you ask a question, what's the difference between a user story and a use case? Is it the same thing? No, it's not the same thing. Then what's the difference? Nobody knows. So that brings us back to one of the first slides. You cannot control what you cannot define. So one of the first things you need to do with your team is define your concepts. Shared concepts is the basis for all communication. Otherwise, you're sitting in meetings and talking about features and user stories and requirements and specifications. And yeah, we have a feature request. All right, is that a requirement request or a feature request? Is it two different things? I don't know. Put it in a backlog, get it done. So there's a lot of structural uncertainty. Definitions. We have no methodology concept. Everything is a methodology because it sells better. And we don't know what success looks like. Well, good luck with that. Elena, you have a question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks also for the great presentation. My question was in regards to what would you suggest would be a good, let me say, balance of putting the risk. So we ask from the project manager to provide best case planning, best case project plan. But then, of course, we say, okay, let's include also a couple of risks, those risks which are urgent and important. Let's include also those risks in that plan. How would you split on the best way between, let me say, contingency reserve, so putting those risks in a contingency reserve or a management reserve, versus putting those risks in that realistic plan?
All right, so there's a number of, my first thing would be like, we're doing risk management. One of the key reasons why risk management fails is the assumption that the problem hasn't taken place yet. So if you go back to the car, right? Your project is to drive from A to B, deliver something, the moment and you get assigned that car, which might be a piece of building equipment like an excavator or something. You start your project. The problem is already there. The engine is leaking oil. So one of the problems, one of the weaknesses of today's risk management, the assumption is made that there are no problems yet at the start of the project. Everything can still. That's not true. You can have problems under your radar visibility. You could even have crisis under your radar visibility right at the start. It's just the question is, when do you become aware? So the first message is risk management is built on a presumption that doesn't exist. But yeah, we identify the risk, we do some measures, some mitigations and stuff like that. Yeah, what about the problems you're having that are already a problem? What about the crisis that you're already having and you're unaware of? So risk management in itself is not enough. When it comes to estimates, basically, there is the best case scenario, there's the worst case scenario, and there is the most likely one. So you work with a ballpark, worst case, best case, and that's the one that you have most faith in. And what you also see is the most optimistic one and the most pessimistic one. That's not really correct. Whether you're optimistic, when you're optimistic inclined, then your most likely estimate is closer to the best case. And when you're pessimistically inclined, then you're most likely the one that you present in your actual calculations is towards the worst case scenario. So when it comes to estimates, there is on the left-hand side best case, there's the most likely one, and there's the worst case. The bigger the bandwidth, the higher your uncertainty. So I talked to a guy once, a developer, and I said, can you give me an estimate? I said, well, you know what? If I'm best case is 40 hours, 1 week work, but we could be opening Pandora's box. We're looking at 1,200 hours, a year's work of fixing this. That is uncertainty. Xindo, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I have a question. Paul, do you have any experience? Is currently in Germany as we start to adopt the AI, working with the AI, there are two perspectives. One is how to use the AI tools is to do the risk management, and the second is how to govern the AI for regarding the project management. Right. Yeah, and do you have some experience about it? Or from our audience, yeah, do you have any practical experience?
We just lost Paul. I just read him.
Sorry.
I don't know if you could hear the end of Xin question. Maybe you want to come.
Xin, thank you very much. Thank you very much for asking that, because there is a entrepreneur who is waiting for you to ask exactly that question, and he's an entrepreneur in an AI company that is building AI tools. I'm sharing my screen, I hope. So
yes, you are sharing.
We talked about the project metadata model, and going back to the axis of awesome, right? So there's thousands and thousands of songs, but by the end of the day, you can play them with 4 chords. And there's millions and millions of projects, but by the end of the day, there's only, let's say, 7, 8, 9, or 10 metadata types, as discussed in the compass model, right? There's a task, there's a deliverable, there's the decision, there's a prerequisite, there's a constraint. So let's say 10 metadata models. So what you would like to do, the AI, is to scan any type of project information for those metadata types. So if you have a transcript from a meeting, you would like the AI to go there and the AI to tell you that, hey, Xin, I found 5 decisions, 4 activities, 3 deliverables, and 2 problems. And they say, good, because I only spotted 1 decision. And it can troll through all the emails, it can troll through all the documentation on SharePoint, it can troll over Slack, and build, if it's capable of recognizing these metadata types, then it could build a result breakdown structure like this for you, and then you can start managing things. And the good thing is that the good thing is that the AI can run 24/7. So you need to eat and we need to eat and sleep, right? We can't be. If I was running a program with 18 projects, I couldn't be everywhere. On a good day, I looked into the information from 2 or 3 projects. But an AI can run 24/7, and when you go to work, it can say like, "Hey, Xin, I had a little troll to some information. I found 4 decisions that are not yet on your radar, and 1 is urgent, I believe, and that's the start of your day." So yes, AI can dramatically improve our information awareness and our information availability by doing these techniques for us. And first of all, is discovering it, then make it available in your Power Kanban, update your KPIs in your keyboard, and then visualize it like in a breakdown structure. You could also ask it to visualize it in a network. So you can say, hey, my dear AI, we have a mega project on our hands. We've got 180 decisions. Do me a proposal of how do you think in a network diagram, what is the logic, what are the dependencies, and so on and so on. So these methods can be taught to an AI, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Paul. I think you gave us a lot of knowledge and how to better characterize and manage our risk and uncertainty. Thank you everybody for the session. Thank you again for attending. And I will just give you some information, and just before I will close the recording. So thank you very much for this session and the question.
I'll stay behind